Okay, this is an exciting story of the search for the rose tattoo on the behind of one of the most sexy, beautiful, fantastic women in the world. Okay, so here's how it all began. I was listening to a radio talk. Now, I'm an old geezer. And so if I talk about what I was listening to before the era of the computer. We're talking about the 1960s. All right. But anyway, to get back to our main subject, there was a radio interview with a guy who was very famous then. His name was Lyle Tuttle. And since he was about 10 years older than me, I assume he's dead now, so I can mention his name. And Lyle Tuttle was the person who brought tattoos to the mainstream. Before he came on the scene, the only tattoos were on convicts who had nothing better to do during their sentence than to get a blue tattoo, maybe on their ear or something like that. Okay, so he brought very fashionable tattoos, especially on women, into the mainstream. He had flowers, dragons, and very, very good art. In fact, if you go to YouTube or somewhere else and you look up Lyle Tuttle tattoos, you're going to have a very pleasant experience. But getting back to our main erotic story, in the course of this interview, he said, oh, he was asked, well, what was the best and most fascinating tattoo you ever had, you ever did? And he says, this is a strange story, but I had an absolutely wonderful girlfriend. She was an artist, and she was the best lover I ever had in my life. She was absolutely wonderful, and I think she was an American from California. And this girl, because I was the world's greatest tattoo artist, I said, "Hey, sweetheart, I'm going to give you a tattoo anywhere you want for free." And Lyle Tuttle, of course, he charged enormous sums for his beautiful tattoos. Well, anyway, and they were in color. Before him, tattoos were, green, or not green, kind of a ugly blue. But anyway, getting back to my story about this beautiful girl. So she didn't want a tattoo at all. And he said, "Oh, if you're my girlfriend, you have to have a souvenir of our relationship." So I talked her, this is Lyle Tuttle talking, I talked her into having a tiny, minuscule, I'm talking itsy bitsy, tattoo of a beautiful rose on her behind. And she went for it. Well, that's the beginning of my story. Now, uh, he said he broke up with this girl a long time ago, but if anyone was ever lucky enough to meet her, boy, he would have the experience of a lifetime. So, of course, being a rich bachelor in California at that time, I said to myself, I'm going to find this woman with the itsy bitsy rose tattoo on her butt. And I was kind of a detective in those days. So I looked up everything about Lyle Tuttle to try and get her identity. And I found on the cover of a magazine, a famous magazine of the time, there was a picture of Lyle Tuttle standing like this and a girl next to him wearing a t-shirt of all the Lyle Tuttle tattoos. It was like a full t-shirt right next to him. And she had no tattoos, at least no visible ones. Well, something about this picture convinced me that this must be the girl with the rose tattoo. So I'll save you a year of searching. But when my search came to an end, I can't say I discovered, but I learned that of all the coincidences in the world, this mysterious girl with the minuscule rose tattoo on her butt lived in my town. So I had to figure out how to get acquainted with her and seduce her and stuff because I wanted to see this famous rose tattoo. So I I called her up on the phone and I made up some story about some famous guy in the town, or I should say, well-known politician that we both knew, because everybody in this relatively small town would know the mayor. Okay, so I said, hey, well, the mayor was telling me you're a very nice single girl. I'd like to meet you. Well, okay, now I'll skip to the most dramatic part. I met the girl. She was very pleasant. She was an artist and I wouldn't say she was a feminist, but she was very independent, didn't need anybody. And it took a while. Usually in those days, my formula was if I didn't succeed within the second or third date, I dropped them. But I went out with her maybe 6 to 10 times. And finally, I got her, where I wanted her in my apartment in a hot tub. And in those days, everybody was doing hot tubs. And of course, you had to get nude to get in a hot tub. So we both got in the hot tub nude. And guess what I saw? Well, you'll never guess because, I mean, can't miss guessing because I told you in the beginning what I was looking for. Well, there it was. When she got out and I got a view of her butt, there it was, the mysterious rose tattoo. Well, I pursued her for a while after that and was successful. And once again, I can't go into detail on this adults only site because who knows, some under 18 person might be watching. But we had a very good time for quite a while. And then, as usually happened in those days, she dumped me and I went on to the next, if you want to call it a conquest, not a very fashionable word anymore, but I went on to the next subject of my interest. And that is the story of the rose tattoo.